championship weekend has called for kind of the Avengers of what I like to refer to as Patriots, Twitter, podcasting, call it whatever you want, assembled. Sophie, McGarvin, and now Khari at Boston.com, notable guest here. Him and I broke some of the biggest news involving earlier this year with the Drake-Kendrick beef, because what else are you going to talk about during the offseason? But anyway, guys, we have so much to discuss. There's new coaches for both of Khari's teams, and the Bears and the Patriots. There's a dumpster fire in Jacksonville that just is, to quote McGarvin, do you see how fucking goofy this looks? And also, too, there's two very important football games to be played this weekend. And also, too, there was a national champion crowned on Monday night. So where do we want to get started?
I guess Patriots.
Yeah,
let's start there.
That's what I know. So
let's start with the most sensible of the places at this particular point in time. I mean, I think the Bears are probably sensible at this point, but the Patriots are the ones we care about the most.
Yeah, you know what? New offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, new-ish, I guess, coming back for a third term. It's like the farewell tour that just won't ever end.
Return of the Josh.
Drake and Josh. We got Drake and Josh.
Hug me, brother.
Which is funny because I think somebody mentioned, has Drake May even seen Drake and Josh? Is he old enough for that?
So true.
It was he was born in 2002, I think it was, and Drake and Josh premiered in 2004. So he would have been, but I think it was replayed on Nick so many times that if you watch any of those channels, I think you have to have seen it. And if not, he's at home binging it right now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's I would be shocked if he hadn't been heard Drake and Josh and enough times to be okay, let me see what this whole Drake and Josh thing is. He's seen the memes.
The same thing was after when they played the Bills. It was the same thing with Drake and Josh
right, exactly.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then you know what? I've said, Sophie and I were talking about this before, but I said as well, defensive coordinator Terrell Williams getting brought on board, which when you look at that man, that is a man who was brought into this world to coach football. Basically, just brought on this earth just to, be a football guy, just to really tell people, hey, go hit that person, go inflict pain on their lives. And that's what's going to happen. But the most important one that we always talked about on the show is the retention of Jeremy Springer as special teams coordinator. Special teams, special players, special moments. It's a motto that goes around for all football. And really, it's just the fact that we're not coming out here and expecting a lot this year with this team. But the fact that there's just proper continuity that we can look forward to now where it's not a complete unknown. It's, hey, these guys have experience at all levels. And the fact that you have players like Jeffrey Simmons singing praises for Williams as well really shows that, look, they got the right people involved.
You didn't hear that last year. You didn't hear any of this. You heard congrats for Gerard getting the head coaching gig, being the successor to Bill Belichick. But outside of maybe the few guys on the defense who worked with him in the past, there was nothing from outside the building. This is a whole different situation where you have Vrabel. I mean, people who played for him and who just seen him around the league are singing his praises just as much. I mean, everyone kind of, I feel like it's a widely known thing that he was a scapegoat in Tennessee. And it was kind of surprising that he was let go when he was. I'm not complaining about it now, but at the moment it was kind of oh my gosh. And then you have Josh McDaniels. That was the right call all along. That was the guy you needed to bring in. You needed someone who was an established offensive coordinator who had a history of running the offense, because as much as I wasn't, we all know I was a Alex Van Pelt fan. I would have been, as much as I think people were upset with his play call, I would have been okay had he been retained because Drake loved him. And I was hoping he would stay on in some capacity. Of course, no one's going to take that deal when you're demoted from offensive coordinator. I can't blame him there. But Josh is the best thing for Drake, I think, in this situation that he's in going into year 2. With Williams, I'm with you. Also with history with Vrabel and with Jeff. When I saw Jeffrey Simmons singing his praises, I was like, okay, that's kind of all I need right now to know that this guy's well respected across the league. Springer, I've said it 500 times, I think, on this podcast alone, that it was the right call. You had all pros, you had, punt returners, you had a unit that was doing it all and that loved working with Springer. And I also think, given all the shit that happened with the Patriots last season, Springer was actually one of the best coaches. He stepped up in moments where he needed to step up as a coach, not even on the field, just off the field. And so I was happy to see he was retained.
Yeah, I mean the him stepping up to the podium and delivering that gem about if you don't want to get shot at, don't join the army. That was one of the first times all season I think a coach had stepped up and been like, okay, way to take the heat off your team. Great job right there. I think, and I'm still sort of sorting through how I feel about it, but I think if this was purely about what was best for Drake May, I still think there's an argument for, hey, maybe that Ben Johnson guy who led the best offense in football for the last 3 years, and basically, working with Drake May as like a Super Saiyan version of Jared Goff, that might have been the way to go. But I think what we got from hiring Mike Vrabel is a holistic view at reorganizing this franchise. And again, there's experience here. And I think that was the one thing. Ben Johnson's never been a head coach before. And, Mike Vrabel has. And he's a good head coach. You know this. You've seen him in action. He sent Tom Brady to Tampa Bay, all that good stuff. And I think to your point, Sophie, right? Like Alex Van Pelt, whether you liked his play calling or not, was clearly a very good teacher to Drake May. I mean, and again, I think that it wasn't that I've been adamant about this, that Drake May could have played off the bat if they really wanted to. And I think there was all this smokescreen about, he's not ready, and I mean, they're not as happy, with his progress as they could have been. I was like, y'all lying. Y'all are doing a wonderful job of lying.
I don't think they lied. Gerard said at training camp, Drake is out playing Jacoby, but we're going to go with Jacoby. That was the beginning of the end right there.
Was kind of saying like, I think we could have, he needs to do XYZ thing. And I'm talking mainly about like Greg Bedard's reports that were coming out about, they're really, if you gave him truth serum, they wouldn't be as happy with Drake May. And I was like, y'all lying. I'm sorry. Like we see it. We see that he can play right now. And you're absolutely right. He basically said, he told the truth. He said, he's outplaying him in preseason games. So, I mean, preseason games versus practice and all of that, is one thing. But he was like, look, we're going to let him cook. We're going to let him bake a little longer in the oven. And then when he's ready, we're going to go ahead and put him out there. And that was the right thing to do. And I think that when you look at Alex Van Pelt's body of work with both Drake May and Joe Milton, which I think we got to talk about, just like add that in there, because Joe Milton looked like a guy who can play quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think he necessarily looked like that in preseason. But I think that if you're Josh McDaniel, you can't go wrong with Josh McDaniels teaching Drake May either. And I think we have to say that, because it's, again, with him, it's not just the play calling, because his title for most of his time with the Patriots was offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He was the most intimately involved with the quarterbacks of anybody on the team, Bill Belichick included, right? You go to
Bill didn't have anything to do with the offense.
Well, no, seriously, like you go to the practices, right? Like when Josh McDaniels was here, and Bill would like wander over on occasion, right? And be like, yeah, let's see what's going on with Mac or whatever. But it's like they are attached, right? Josh McDaniels is around them constantly, right? I don't know if you ever see them not together. And I think that's what we're going to see in training, in mini camp, OTAs, training camp, on the sidelines at games. It is going to be Drake May and Josh McDaniels looking like Siamese twins. And you could do a lot worse for your young quarterback than that. The rest of the offense, we'll see.
Yeah, I think what the, overall coaching makeup is, as far as like the coordinators go, the thing that it tells me is that there was more, and obviously we know this now, but there was more going on off the field with relation to the inexperience on the staff versus on the field, right? So obviously it looked how it looked. It was not good, and it looked like our guys didn't know what they were doing, which they were all new coaches or coaches that weren't established. Speaking specifically to AVP, since she's only been a coordinator one other time, whatever. you look at the defense, everyone's like, dang, they can't make an adjustment to save their life. Like, there's nothing going on over there. Gerard's over on the sideline, just kind of hanging out, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's not managing the game and all that. I think we obviously saw that, but I think it also confirmed that, like, off the field, that they felt like we're not getting enough leadership out of our guys, because you think about everyone they brought in. Jeremy Springer is the youngest tenured, he's the first time coordinator last year. So he's the one with the least amount of coordinating experience. Terrell Williams, you're looking at I think it's 11 years or 12 years. Josh McDaniel's been around since the olden days. So it's like, and then Mike Vrabel obviously had already been coaching with the Titans prior. He spent some time in Houston. These are like guys who have been around. So the complete flip kind of tells me, like, all right, it's more than just what was happening on the field. It feels like from on top, they just thought, hey, our coaches don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to fix it. Everyone is too new. That's going to be an issue. As far as the actual people brought in, y'all know I'm a Josh McDaniels truther. I've been since day one, and I'm not ashamed of it. So I'm beyond cool with him. I know people are going to have concerns. Oh, his offense might be outdated. Blah blah blah. I don't necessarily buy that. And then
you made Mac a Pro Bowler his rookie season. I think that's all you need on your resume right now.
You dragged the corpse of Cam Newton to 7 wins, like offensively. Yeah. It's like, we're just gonna win some games, I guess.
So honestly, I think that might have even been the better coaching job when you think about it, because at least in 2021,
he couldn't even throw at that point. He came in the middle of the summer and it's just like, yo, we're just gonna get him up ready to go.
Demir Bird is wide receiver 1-2 in that offense, and Gunnar Olszewski.
Yeah. And they were making it happen. So I obviously think right there, I'm like, I think people are just a little hard on McDaniels. I know it's particularly, everyone always mentions, well, what about the third and long screens? And I'm just like, that's a strategic thing. It actually makes a lot of sense when it's 3rd and 14. You can't be like, oh, we're just going to throw the football downfield with a bunch of guys who you don't even believe can get downfield. You know what I'm saying? Like, everyone's always like, oh, the Patriots weapons are terrible. And then the Patriots don't go for it. Why didn't they go for it? And I'm like, I don't understand. So I'm cool with Josh McDaniels. I have been since day one. Terrell Williams, I'm beyond excited about. The job he did in Tennessee was really good, especially that 2021 season where he was able to squeeze some production out of Bud Dupree. Oh my gosh! And Harold Landry had his best year of his career, 12 sacks and all that. So you see the job he did with a lot of the guys they were working with, and you kind of get a little excited. And then obviously you see what happened in Detroit, and then a lot of people are putting Detroit's defense on him. There's like, oh, well, why would you want anyone from from Detroit's defense? They were terrible. And I'm like, well, one, that was injuries. And two,
there was a Lee McNeil.
There was a Lee McNeil. You know what I mean? Like,
they had 2 starting lineup worth of people on IR.
Yeah, and people are just gonna put it on him, and I'm like, I don't understand that, especially because their front, when healthy, was a good unit.
Aiden Hutchinson, McNeil, basically
Levi Onwuzurike, like these guys were just like they were balling, and then everyone got hurt. So prior to that, though, they was cooking. So I think I'm really excited about him, and Jeremy Springer is just good energy. Also, he gave us all pro Brendan Schooler, which kind of anyone who watches the Patriots football and understand special teams, you're like, oh, that guy's going to be an all-pro. Just because you see him make plays like legitimately affecting the outcome of the game because returners can't return the ball. So they're getting pinned down at the 12, and he's just down there like, yeah, man, it's just what's going to happen. But beyond Brendan Schooler, we've talked about it a few times on the show before, but Marcellus Dial, he was able to turn Marcellus Dial into a capable gunner. He is a player on that special teams unit. And you're like, on that punt coverage unit, you're like, wow, he is like, this is the guy who matters if you know what you're watching. So I'm like, cool. I'm beyond cool with the job he's done. Kind of got to figure out the returner situation, though. The Patriots don't have a kick returner. Punt returner Marcus Jones is going to do his thing, but as far as kick returner goes, that was a disaster. The only blemish for me for Springer on his coaching resume is how they just kept putting I'm blanking on homie's name right now, but the running back. The running back with Jermichael Hasty. Jermichael Hasty. Yeah, they kept putting him back there, and he just kept making poor decisions. And I'm like, okay, this has to be a coaching error at this point.
They tried to put Javon Baker back there, and they were like,
yeah, it's like
and they were like,
they can't figure it out, and these guys are just making bad decisions, and maybe this is a personnel issue. There's we just don't have anyone better, but it was like Right, but Jermichael Hasty's catching the ball 7 yards into the end zone, taking it out and getting tackled at the 13. Why? Like, why? What are we doing? Things like that. I'm like, all right, but maybe it's a personnel issue. We just didn't have anyone better to stick in, so it is what it is. I'm cool with the coaching staff. I also, I'm with you, Khari, on the earlier point with Ben Johnson. That was who I wanted. But at the same time, once it was clear we were getting Vrabel, the people he hired kind of already made sense. You're like, all right, cool. We'd heard from the beginning, Josh McDaniels is the favorite to be the OC. And you're like, that makes sense. I see it. I like it. Cool. Let's go with it. And then Terrell Williams had popped up really early in the process too, but it was mostly like not even like sourced stuff. People were just like, oh yeah, Terrell Williams would be good. And I'm like, do y'all know something? Like what's happening here? And then they close the deal and you're like, all right, that's cool. That makes sense. So I'm cool with the Patriots coaching staff. I'm also just not a crybaby about things I can't control.
With the Marcellus Dial thing, I totally agree. I was going to say the Marcellus Dial thing, I totally agree with it. Because I think like when he came in, I remember speaking because like all the rookies speak a lot over, the course of training camp. And I remember he was like looking at the cornerback room and was kind of like, well, if that's how I'm looking to make the roster, I'm lucky I'm on the practice squad, basically. But he saw special teams. Springer saw a lot of potential in Dial, and he worked. I give Dial a lot of credit and I give Springer a lot of credit. Both of them deserve it because they worked so hard to make Dial into the gunner that could work alongside someone like Brendan Schooler, and he balled out. Again, I think it's hard when you have someone like Brendan Schooler. He's going to get all the glory in those moments, but there were a lot of tackles Dial was making in key moments that looking back on the film, I was like, God damn. And then the AVP thing with Joe Milton, that to me was like, wow, I think, yes, Drake was amazing, but I was like, that could have just like in retrospect, had like the Josh McDaniels stuff not been as big as it was, I was like, that could have just saved his job, or that should easily get him another job. Like I think
that is clear. Yeah, that you're good at your job because
if you have a rookie quarterback coming in,
a 6th round rookie quarterback.
It is Joe Milton. I mean, no disrespect to Joe Milton, but like just knowing what we knew about him in college, and you're like, well, this guy can't run a pro offense. And then seeing him in the summer, and you're like, well, this guy can't run a pro offense. To then in December, you're like, all right, well, it's against the Bills' backups and third teamers, but like it looks like he can run the offense, and that didn't look like the case in the preseason. So, woof, what a job!
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, again, it was like second and third stringers in preseason, and he still wasn't playing on time. Right. But then in that little action, you're like, look at you. Look at that footwork. That's clean. I love it. Oh, and by the way, also, you can do the random shit that, Joe Milton does. Yeah. Right. But I want to say something. I just want to say McGarvin real quick. You mentioned, the job that, Terrell Davis has done with, Harold Landry and Bud Dupree. And there's been all this talk about, Mike Vrabel and the job he did in Houston with Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless, and I hear a lot of edge rusher talk right now. And I don't know. I just keep on thinking about the Patriots had the number 4 overall pick in the draft, and
we're all in on Abdul Carter here.
I don't know, man. Like, do you think, I know we need offensive line and wide receiver and all that, but
if Abdul Carter is there, you're taking Abdul Carter.
Yeah, that's the play. That is the play. That is just the play. I don't understand the people who are so against it. Some people are just like, absolutely not. You have to go O-line. And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of forcing, or you have to trade down. I'm like,
Chargers had to go wide receiver at 5th overall last year, and look what they did. Joe Alt looked fantastic.
But this is the thing. It's the same shit that we always go through every year, right? It's like people see the list of needs that you have for your team, and you're like, you have to fulfill this need in the first round. No, you don't. Not if you do it the right way.
Yeah, but the Patriots list of needs is as thick as this book.
Is that and again, also yes. But and the other thing too is right, yeah, the offensive line was bad, right? And the wide receivers didn't do anything.
They were also
last in sacks. And and they were horrible at getting pressure on the quarterback. And so it's like, okay, you have your 3 needs that are all sort of like in the same realm. And I know 2 of them affect Drake May, right? But 2 of those needs you could probably address in a decent fashion via trade or free agency. And none of those 3 options, only one of them has a freaking mutant that might be available at number 4 overall. So I'm thinking, and that might not even be, he might not even be there. So if he gets to number 4 overall, I don't want to hear shit. I don't want to hear nothing.
If he gets to number 4 overall and they take longer than 5 seconds before I see that, if I hear the little ding and said that says the pick is in, I'm riding.
Yeah, it's like I still think that Adam Schefter report about like, oh, Tennessee may go this. I think that's a BS smokescreen they're setting up to try to get like, Chicago Bears-esque call. That's what I think.
I also think that's probably his agent being like, well, we've got some interest from the Titans, and it's like,
yeah, I mean, it's all BS. But I mean, they're trying. And here's the thing, I think. And I mean, I've already seen reports, right, that the Titans have gotten calls about the number 1 overall pick. Because come on, you might as well, right? There's no reason not to do it, especially if, the quarterback class, because, okay, when we talk about the quarterback class, I just want to say something real quick, right? People keep talking about, the quarterback class isn't that strong. You're really only talking about 2 quarterbacks that matter here, okay? It's Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And when I watch Cam Ward, do I see a generational prospect? Not necessarily, no. But do I see somebody that could start in the NFL? Yeah. And so to me, I think that's a perfect, like if Cam Ward goes number 1 overall, which I kind of expect that he will, because if he's a quarterback and desperate teams do shit to get quarterbacks, I think that makes perfect sense. Like, flip on the tape, the dude can play, right? But I think that it's perfectly reasonable for Tennessee to play that card because Abdul Carter does exist and Travis Hunter does exist, right? So if there's that idea of, I might just not even do the whole quarterback thing. There are actually 2 very feasible prospects that I could rock with. And if you want that quarterback at number 2 or over 3, you might be SOL. That's why it's great to hold the keys to the draft, New England.
That's the thing, though, too. But then if they stayed at number 1 and they didn't trade the Hall, but they take Abdul Carter, there's going to be a subsection of the fan base. It's like, you just did the safe thing. Why'd you do that? And then Abdul Carter looks like a maniac. And it's like, oh, you were all proven wrong. There is another quarterback, though, that I think McGarvin has climbing up his draft boards, at least right now as well. And that's Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. Just because, there's always that like sleeper quarterback that like will emerge out of nowhere. Zach Wilson, Michael Penix. That comes up there. So those are, because at the same time too, you're going to get teams like the Saints. I think if there's a team just stupid enough to trade with Tennessee to get a quarterback, it'll probably be like the Saints or the Raiders, mid-level thing.
Can I throw out that Zach Wilson was on that list of sleeper quarterbacks?
He had one good throw to his pro day and it made him go 2 overall. As soon as you saw him get cooked by Coastal Carolina in that game in 2020, you should have known he wasn't going to be a good NFL player. We should have known. We should have known that. And then I remember watching that.
He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in college. Now, one thing I will say is there was another guy who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in college that I was like, okay, he's really exciting, but I don't know how he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. And that is one of the MVP finalists this year, Josh Allen.
Oh, Josh Allen. I thought we were talking about Trey Lance. I was like, he went in the same class.
He did. but that's the thing. Like, Josh Allen is one of one in terms of his player development. And again, like literally he just had to make a mechanical adjustment and he became a lot more accurate and he figured things out. But the thing was, the talent was always insane. But the work ethic and just the raw ability was also just well above Zach. Like, all Zach Wilson could do was make fun throws. He was not good at any other part of football. And so it was patently insane to me. It still makes me upset. It wasn't even about a team that I cared about, but it just, like, from a process standpoint, pissed me off that he went number 2 overall. It's terrible.
Dumb teams do dumb things, and now that same team that drafted Zach Wilson is going to provide us with, to quote you, Khari, black Air Force One football that we see in the AFC North, because I feel like all AFC East games going forward now are going to be like either 10-7, just like boring drag them out football games, or those like random Cincinnati, Baltimore 36-34 Thursday night games that no one sees coming.
The thing is, like, those AFC North style games where they don't score a lot can still be exciting because you just got a bunch of dudes just kicking each other's ass.
Except for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, they don't really do that. What a finesse! What a finesse of a team.
But anyway, since we only have
they got the most light skinned energy in the whole AFC East.
Since obviously like we only have Khari for a certain amount of time, and you mentioned Josh Allen, we're going to jump right into it just quickly because like we said, we have 2 football games this week, and the first one being the AFC Championship, where Kansas City is the 2-point favorite right as of now over Buffalo. And I've been going back and forth on this all week because there's 2 sides to me where no matter who wins, I'll be more about, throwing shade at the loser. And there's a gut feeling inside of me saying that Buffalo can win this game, but winning in the playoffs is about winning moments, not winning games. And who is better right now at winning in critical moments and taking your heart out than number 15, Patrick Mahomes?
Well, it's like it's Tom Brady to me. That's the thing. It's like,
It's the boogeyman.
I learned from living in New England my whole damn life that I won't bet against Tom Brady. And I feel the same way about Patrick Mahomes. It's like he could be the favorite. He could be a 15-point underdog. And I would still go into that game being like, right now I'm feeling the Chiefs. But it's just because the minute I say, oh, the Chiefs don't have it, like, oh, no, definitely not. It's like, okay, I'm going to look stupid because Patrick Mahomes is going to go out there and do the same shit Brady did every year. Win the damn game, go beat whatever the NFC team is, and three-peat, because we're all counting them out already. Like, I think Buffalo has an insane team. And I think that they have a top-tier quarterback, one of the best in the league right now. I mean, Mahomes and Allen is a rivalry that is up there with some of the top quarterback rivalries. Like, I will already say that. I think that is a fair assessment that this is a key rivalry already. That being said, it's kind of like that. I think there will be a day that Josh Allen will finally get over and beat Mahomes in the playoffs. But also a part of me could see it being like Mahomes loses in an earlier round. They just have a really bad game, end up losing, and Buffalo can go and, I see it kind of those 2 ways, but I don't know if this year is the year. Because I also feel like Kansas City's firing off on all cylinders right now. Like, you have number 15, but Hollywood Brown, if they didn't even get the receivers going last game and they were that good.
George
so it's like, imagine if they can get the receivers going. They have the top O-line. They have these insane defensive. I mean, I think that, Deion Dawkins, he's the only one that can have a chance. And I just think that put Chris Jones on the other side and
maybe
have
Spencer
him rush.
Brown too, though. Maybe Spencer Brown as well on the right side.
That is true. But covering Chris Jones is a whole other animal. That is, I think I just like run over to the side and be like, you go, bestie. I give up.
I have one other thing to say about Kansas City quickly before the guys talk, and that is, who is ready for Nick Bolton for the walk away from them in free agency this year, for them only to draft Jack Sawyer and him just be just as dominant, because it's going to happen.
You can feel it. Kansas City gets set up in the draft so much. It's so irksome. As far as this game goes, though, give me Kansas City. I'm with Sophie on this. Like, you can't tell me. You can tell me, like, oh yes, he's, it's gonna happen. Mahomes is gonna have that game, and they're gonna go home. And I'll be like, yeah, you got to show me though. Like, I'm not betting against them. They will do it until they don't do it. And as of right now, I think they will do it. They're gonna win in Buffalo, and I think whoever wins the AFC is gonna win the Super Bowl anyway. So I'm also kind of gearing up for a three-peat. The only thing is that I just never got a chance to become a Mahomes hater. So like everyone there are people who are like gonna be upset. They're gonna be like, oh man, I can't believe he's gonna three-peat or whatever. I guess because they're afraid it's gonna run into issues with Tom's legacy, which I never really got. So I still enjoy watching him play. He hasn't, fatigued me in any way. I'm like, yeah, cool. Let me see 15 ball out. I can't wait. The player that does piss me off though is 87. I am so tired of him. Travis Kelce, mainly because every week I'm like, he's so old. He's so cooked. He's so washed. He can't even run. And then every week he's just like running down the field. And I'm like, well, how? It's over.
50-yard running catch on Saturday.
It's so crazy. And you're just like, you're watching him run. And you're like, okay,
49.
You kind of run a little like a gazelle because like you're running and it looks like you're running in a straight line, but your body is not in a straight line. You're like moving and ducking and weaving, and as a result, no one's able to get hands on you. So I'm like, okay, I understand how you run, but like, my man, you're like 42. It's time. Suck, please.
No.
Well, that's the thing. When you're old, you know, it's like running fast in a straight line is still something that you can do. It's about the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
The angular running and stuff, and the cutting. And I think that's where you see the biggest issues with Travis Kelce at this point, where you see at this point in his career where he doesn't separate nearly as well as he used to. But if you just forget to cover him the way they did last week, and he just gets wide open, you're just like, oh, well, that's there you go. I guess I'm the lone person who's got to take the Bills this time. But here's the thing. I think it's really hard to bet against Pat. And I think that if it comes down to a last possession and it's got to be a touchdown or a field goal to win, the Chiefs will win, because that just 1,000%. Is what it is. But that's where you have to do what Josh Allen did the first time they meet, which is when you have the opportunity to go for the kill shot, you do your Superman shit. And again, that's what it was, right? It was like, oh man, don't give the ball back to Mahomes with a 1-score game. And he was like, bet. And he took it in from 20 yards out. And you're just like, okay, cool. Well, and even like Chris Collinsworth, I still won't believe it. Casey, I'm like, no, dog, this game's done. This game is over because he.
Well, that's because Collinsworth will never say anything bad about Mahomes.
No, yeah,
and Romo won't say anything bad about Josh Allen.
He is physically incapable of doing that. But that's the key. When it's time to kill them, kill them. And I think that's the thing. Like Josh Allen and the Bills can and will do that. Whereas I think there are other teams that play a little bit scared around the Chiefs. It's like, oh man, I don't want to give the ball back to Mahomes or whatever. I got to take these points and make them score or whatever. And he's like, no, actually, we're just going to go score a touchdown right now.
Well, Allen has faith in his whole team. That's the difference right there. And I will agree with you there is like, their other quarterbacks are like, yeah, don't let him get it. Don't let him get it. And he will be like, no, my freaking
don't let me get it.
Don't let me get it. Like, I know my defense can go out there and stop this man. Now it's my turn to go out there and score. And that's I really respect that about I think the Bills' game plan too. You give coaches that credit because they're not the ones that are, pushing the brakes on those moments to be like, Josh, take it down a notch. We don't want to give they're like, no, get us that goddamn touchdown. Let your defense do its job.
The mental battles here between Bobby Babich, who I gotta say has done an excellent job as Bills defensive coordinator this year, and Steve Spagnuolo, who obviously probably Hall of Fame coordinator. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings, 1 against the Patriots, sadly, and 3 with the Chiefs. Has done a great job. The only complaint I have about Pat Mahomes, it's not even a complaint. It's more of like, you don't need to do that. Is the little flop out of bounds to try to get a flag. I'm like,
he admitted it. And I'm with you. He went on though. He did a radio show and was like, no, that was bad of me. And they didn't call me on it, rightfully so.
And then the next play, he does some wizardry shit, and we're all like, oh, that's why we're all picking him to win on Sunday. Sorry for cutting you off, Sophie.
No. And I'm not trying to defend him. I think that it's unfair of this fan base specifically to be like a Mahomes hater the way that they are. When for 20 years you had the same people hating on you as more for doing the same goddamn shit.
Tom Brady was Darth Vader. Patrick Mahomes is Kylo Ren. We all get it.
That's where it's funny, though, because I grew up in Chicago, right? So I have a very similar kind of perspective because I grew up at the end of Jordan, right? So I was born in 1990, so I wasn't really able to process the first 3 titles they won, but I was kind of coming into being able to remember the last 3 titles that they won there. And I remember staying up late to watch in 97 and 98 in particular. And totally everybody was after the Bulls at that one. Like, I'm tired of seeing Michael Jordan win, blah, 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 right? But we didn't have social media back then, so I didn't get to see it, quite as much. But you see the way Bulls fans act anytime LeBron gets mentioned, right? And again, I'll still say that LeBron James, the number 2 player of all time behind Michael Jordan. at the same time, I think is wild. Like, I think it's crazy to not want to see greatness and not wanting to see a guy, approach those same heights. And you want to like tear a guy down and you want to see him fail just so he doesn't get close, just so that you can say like, well, they're not even in the conversation. He is in the conversation. And you know what? Mahomes, look, the reality is that even if he were to win this year and do the three-peat, which nobody ever did before, I don't want to hear people crown him the GOAT just because he did that. There's still 3 more rings you got to get. 7 freaking Super Bowls Tom Brady won. 7. You're gonna
went to 10.
Dump that out because one dude got a three-peat? What if he never wins again? We can't do the recency bias thing. And look, at the end, I think it's going to be possible for absolutely, it's going to be possible for Mahomes to be in that conversation, and maybe he will surpass him. Maybe he will. You got to be prepared for that conversation. But right now, you got to play like 13 more years and set all the damn records and get all the Super Bowls. We're not there yet.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's just the whole recency bias stuff. Like even right now too, I know I'm going off to a different. You went to basketball. I'm going to go to hockey. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player of all time right now, his goals record is in jeopardy. Is Alex Ovechkin's only like 25 or 24 away from him. And there's a lot of people that don't want the record broken, but the record's probably going to get broken. I think sometime in the next few months. So it's one of those things where appreciate what you have in the moment before it's gone. That's the thing I want to say, where no one did with Tom Brady. And also, I know I said the little Star Wars thing, but like, you can't really paint Kansas City as a villain because they don't embrace the villain role. It's just people out there that hate them. Meanwhile, with New England, they accepted it. New England
loved
knew
the villain role.
They loved
Yes.
being the bad guy. It's like it's which the W in the show stands for wrestling. They loved being the heel. Meanwhile, Kansas City is, hey, we're this likable team. Oh, people are starting to hate us. Why do they hate us? It's just people want to see something new and fresh. And at the end of the day, for me too, it's either, hey, people that like want to say stuff about Patrick, it's there. But if not, McGarvin and I get to relive we didn't get to see it on Sunday, McGarvin, but the Bills boy last year, who's just after that field goal is just absolutely distraught. And I have my Bills memes I get to share.
Yeah. Y'all said it perfectly. I just the hating on greatness is so lame to me. I think just let him ball, let him do his thing. But I also do want to give some credit to Josh Allen. I think he is having an incredible year. I think he is currently the most physically dominant quarterback in the league. And I mean that in like whole body. Like when that guy starts to run, you're like, holy shit. What are they gonna do? Because like he's a big motherfucker and he's strong. So you're like,
getting him down is harder.
Yeah, and he's smart and he knows. He very rarely scrambles in a situation where I'm like, oh no, you shouldn't have scrambled because there's no lane. And I don't know if that's because he's making the lane because he's just so physically dominant, or if he's just knowing. I really do think it is a knowing though. He knows like, okay, cool. Here is my outlet. Here's where I can kind of backdoor this thing and take off downfield. And he's not like a prolific runner, right? We're not like, oh yeah, he's not running like Lamar Jackson running, but he's running, and you're like, oh no, we have to contend with this. Almost like Big Ben in his prime. I know for whatever reason, people especially on Twitter really like to paint Big Ben as this like big, like hulking, immovable man, and I'm like, nah, that motherfucker could run. Like,
go watch him from 2005 to like 2012.
He could move. Like it's insane to me. So when you see someone like that, I think you have to give him his props. When they lined up for that QB sneak against the Ravens last week, the Bills I'm talking about, when they lined up for that QB sneak, I'm just like, they're gonna get it because he is just so fucking dominant. Like, and they did because he is so fucking dominant.
They got like an extra few yards on it too. Like
it's
I feel
so
like
crazy.
We got so used to tush pushes and QB sneaks, like with all that it's like, okay, like they barely got it. Oh my gosh! And then you look at Josh Allen, you're like, he just got like 20 yards off him, just like being
running up forward. The field, bro. It's so crazy.
Well, I mean, because he's a goddamned moose. You know, all we got to do is just like get the ball and like fall forward, and it's 5 yards. Like, what are you gonna do about that? Either 6'5", 240 pounds. You know, and it was actually wild, watching the Bills Ravens game. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, hold up a second. You mean a defensive back actually didn't get ethered when they blitzed Josh Allen. Like this was the first time I saw a guy not just get straight shrugged off. I was like, wait, you can wrap Josh Allen up? Of course, he didn't like bring him down. He still threw the ball away, right? but because you're not going to actually sack the guy. You can't do that.
We need Drake on that offseason plan. That's all I'm gonna say. We need Drake on that whatever offseason plan Allen's on with the weights and the eating habits and all that to see.
Well, Drake's thing is that he sneakily runs a 4.4 and like nobody was ready for that.
He is just fast. It's so crazy to me. You're watching him and you're like, he's not even like sneaky fast. Like he starts running. You're like,
no, he's just running
away from those dudes. Like he's just faster than them. Like and you don't think of that with quarterbacks because I feel like a lot of the scrambling quarterbacks we have right now aren't necessarily fast. They just know how to find space and get to where they need to get to. Like Lamar Jackson is fast. Like he starts running and you're like, yes, guys are just not going to catch him because he is a fast quarterback. Someone like Justin Herbert
if you can't catch him, you can't tackle him anyway. Like
right, because he's going to juke you out and now you're going to look silly.
Patrick, you go ahead and you come down from the second level and like I got you lined up, and then Lamar's over there and he's on the ground and you're like, oh god. But no, like to that point, man. Like I remember watching him in college and being like, okay, this dude can run a little bit. He really does kind of remind me of like that Justin Herbert, right?
Yes.
Because Justin Herbert doesn't run. He doesn't want to run. But then he takes off and you're like, why doesn't this motherfucker run more?
Yeah.
Manuel Acho's favorite quarterback to talk about. The one thing I love about Josh Allen is there's something else I was about to say, but I'm like, I'm going to refrain. But with Josh Allen too, I love there's sometimes Bills fans who are like, I want Patriots fans to say, hey, Josh, much as we hated Tom. And I'm like, well, Josh hasn't ripped our hearts out. And everyone can go, the playoff game. It's like, yeah, no, we all knew we weren't good. But most Patriot fans
what it is.
Yeah. And most Patriot fans are going to like Josh Allen. But if you guys like running quarterbacks, we also have the NFC Championship where the Philadelphia Eagles are playing I don't even know if I want to call them a Cinderella team anymore because what Jaden Daniels did, Frankie Louvu just, I don't even know what to call it against Jared Goff on that pick 6 return, but him, Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, like Zach Ertz, this game right here, for as great as Saquon Barkley has been this year, I think if Philadelphia truly wants to put an exclamation point in this game, we need to see a great Jalen Hurts performance, something that I feel like hasn't happened. Because what they're doing right now is what we saw San Francisco do in the playoffs the first year. Remember the Jimmy Garoppolo year where they were like, hey, Jimmy can't throw, so Raheem Mostert, it's go time. I think if the Eagles truly want to win this game convincingly, Jalen's got to have a day in the air and Saquon's got to have a day in the ground. I think if they're trying to rely on one or the other or one of those options gets shut down, I think the Cinderella team's going to New Orleans.
Yeah, it's interesting that they are kind of a wildly disrespected 12-win team because they won 12 games. And when I think about them,
I'm only saying Cinderella because of the seeding.
I understand. What I'm saying is, though, when I think about Washington, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a 12-win team. I'm like, oh, yeah, they're gone to the playoffs and the bottom's going to fall out any minute now. And every week you're just waiting like any minute now because they're so improbable, right? It's just so improbable that Jaden Daniels came out and was that good like immediately. And you're like, oh, cool. Like it's gonna run out. His luck's gonna run out. He's gonna hit a Ricky Wall, whatever. And you're just like, no, he's just gonna keep balling. And you're like, sick. That defense coming together the way they did. And as someone who was, egg on my face, I was extremely critical about their offseason. I was like, I don't know why they're bringing in some of the guys they're bringing in. They brought in Doris Armstrong over from Dallas, and I'm like, why? He's really not that good. They brought in Bobby Wagner. I'm like, he's really not that good anymore either. I did like Frankie Louvu, though. I was right on that. I was like, that guy could play. But I just didn't really like their free agent plan. They went into the draft, got some good players, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can kind of see what they're kind of trying to cook here.
Build the wall and offensive line.
And then it's just working. And for a 12-win team playing a division game, I think that -6 is absolutely insane. That is an insane spread because I'm like, this is a good team and they've already beaten them. Now everyone will say, well, wait a minute. Kenny Pickett played like 3 things of the game. And I'm like, I understand. But Jaden Daniels was fucking that defense up. You know what I mean? And that had nothing to do with Kenny Pickett. They were just getting dimed up. And you're like, okay, cool. I just don't think that putting them -6 and be like, oh yeah, they're gonna lose. They're just gonna get washed. Because in the playoffs, 6 points is a washing. IMO. Like, you lose by 6 in the playoffs, it ain't looking too hot. It's like, all right, should have probably been a little closer. I think it's wild to just have them as like, oh yeah, they're just going to show up to Philly, get bludgeoned, and Philly's going to go to the Super Bowl. I think they have a legitimate shot. Terry McLaurin's playing well. Zach Ertz, I mean, he has had a month. Zach Ertz, and by a month I mean the last 30 days, because obviously still fresh into January. But he has had the end of his season has been spectacular, and he had a good game in the playoffs. So you're looking a good game in both playoff games, and you're just looking like, all right, this is someone that is having a resurgence, right? And some people will chalk that up to like, oh, he's already been here before. It's a playoff experience, but you're watching that team just like grow up, and you're like, these guys are Diami Brown. I mean, goodness, what a game he had last week. And you're just looking and you're like, this was all things that we saw in spurts all throughout the season, and they're just putting it together now. And now you're like seeing it play to play. I just think Washington has a better shot than most people think.
My big thing with them too is just look, there's nothing more dangerous than a team with nothing to lose. Think about that. Because if Washington loses this game, they get their flowers. I also trust them to not leave Jalen Carter open in the middle of the field on third down like the Rams did. But, the Commanders lose. It's, hey, you guys had a great season. You went to the NFC Championship for the first time since 1991. Kyrie was 1 year old was the last time.
I wasn't even born.
I wasn't even born. My parents just got married. And, it's that. Meanwhile, if the Philadelphia Eagles lose, it's going to be, I would love to fly on the wall for Philadelphia radio Monday morning if they lose, because, people are going to want Nick Sirianni fired. Oh, my God, Jalen Hurts.
Trade Jalen Hurts. Cut him.
Trade him, cut him, trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots. I don't know. The crazy takes that could get flowing from that would be insane. One thing I will say, though, that I'm interested in is how I've said the offensive line for Washington's played great, but obviously Sam Cosmi, who I got to say, really emerging as a really good right guard for them, tore his ACL in the game against Detroit. So we'll see how that goes as well. So that sucks to see. But the other X factor, too, which I want to mention with the Philadelphia defense as well, is two things. One, no Nakobe Dean, which, look, the Rams, Matt, I know they lost, but Matt Stafford is having a really good day. Here's the other thing, too, though. Vic Fangio runs a very simple man zone defense. If he does that and does not get creative, Jaden Daniels will cook you in this game. You need to throw weird, wacky shit at him. You need to do all that. You play it simple. Just say, hey, we're going to run man and zone and expect us to stop him in certain things. You're probably going to be in for a long day.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, having watched a lot of Vic Fangio, when he was here in Chicago, that was back when I was in Chicago, not anymore. But a lot of these like old school defensive coordinators are all about keep the ball in front of you, make the other team make mistakes, make them do something that you don't want to do, and pounce on it when they do that. Jaden Daniels doesn't really put the ball in harm's way. He moves through things really quickly, and if he doesn't like it, he runs. Right? You're not going to get a whole lot of opportunities to do that. And I also think that Cliff Kingsbury does such a good job of creating easy opportunities for Jaden Daniels and also stretching the defense horizontally, that if you just sit back and cover two, the way Vic Fangio would prefer to do on most days, that's not going to work. And also they're going to run the ball a lot, right? And so I think that you, as you said, you have to switch things up. And I almost liken it to, it's not exactly the same. They don't run the same defensive schemes, but I think some of the philosophies can kind of be similar, right? With like Bill Belichick and the defense that they ran here, where it worked so well against your traditional quarterbacks, but not so well against quarterbacks who broke the mold, and especially guys who could run, because you're so used to playing like, oh, this is how a guy will react in this situation. And it's like, oh, wait, what do you mean he's running now? And I don't have a plan for that. What is this? And I think I would be concerned from Philly's aspect of if you're not getting to him quickly enough, because they're getting the ball out of his hands, they're stressing you out on the edges, or they're just throwing hot really well, and Jaden Daniels getting a lot of easy completions, or he's beating you, or he's beating you on draws or beating you on design runs. Oh, and then by the way, Terry McLaurin gets loose on you down the field, or something like that, I think there comes a point where are your answers? Because against a team like, like if they had played the Lions, or against a team, like the Rams, where you can pin your ears back and get after a prototypical drop back quarterback, oh, that's great. Philly's going to eat off that. But what happens when the pass rush can't get home because he's getting the ball out, or dude's running away from you?
That's, what, it all makes sense. Also, one thing I want to report on, just with everything going on today with Jacksonville as well, it appears that Robert Saleh is now headed back to San Francisco as defensive coordinator as well. So we'll see what he does.
Yep.
Yeah, what he does there. A little. I mean, hey, look, Josh McDaniels coming back to New England.
A bit of Patriots related news that just came across the feed.
No, I did not. I just saw
the Patriots are hiring Ashton Grant as their quarterbacks coach. Grant, who's been with the Browns the last 5 years, also interviewed for the Packers QB coach job this offseason. Now he joins Mike Vrabel and Josh Daniels in New England, which is interesting because, again, so often Josh McDaniels would be the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. But now, not to say that he won't still have the overall, right, purview.
He's going to basically be quarterback. I don't see him taking.
But the idea is that they actually hired a guy to be the quarterback's coach.
Maybe
I think that could be a Vrabel thing too, which is like his coaching style. He's had a quarterback's coach in the past and just wants, also you have Drake May. So as much as you don't want like too many cooks in the kitchen, you also want someone that, as much as like, yes, Josh McDaniels, he's your OC, but he's also your quarterback's coach. The only thing with that is that, yes, he had Tom Brady. And when you have a Tom Brady, like Tom Brady could also do a lot on his own. By the time like Josh was really at his prime with that. So like when you look at Drake, you're not at that level with him yet. So it's like Josh is going to have a lot of other responsibilities, especially considering the state of this offense right now. So I actually think it's a pretty smart move to bring in someone who just their main concern only is Drake and Joe. That is like who they work with, who's in the room with them. That's that. And, I think that this is going to be Josh's room in the end. I think that whoever they brought in was kind of I'd be shocked if this guy's coming in with all these new ideas on how to develop a quarterback, or if he's willing to just be sitting there and being like, I'll be a sponge, whatever you need from me. And then, he goes out and does what Josh does. That's kind of where I see it. I do want to say, because I didn't get a chance to say something on the Washington Eagles game, my college roommate, and I got family in Philly, so it's very hard to say this, but I will agree that going against someone with nothing to lose is so hard, because for the Eagles, not making it to the Super Bowl is like, what the hell are you doing?
It's a failure.
But for Washington, making it to the NFC Championship is like, oh my God, look what you did. And so
house money.
It's you're going against a team that can do anything they want right now. I mean, even if they go out there and they don't play their best game because they're being so risky and things like that, it's like, okay, they had a bad game, but look at like the season they had. Look at the rookie season, Jaden Daniels, how you can't take that away. Whereas if they go out, try all this like crazy stuff that Jaden's been doing all season and it works and they pull it off, then you're like, whoa.
My final prediction for this game, by the way, is I think the Eagles win, but the Commanders definitely cover the 6 number. They're going to I think this is going to come down to Jake Elliott's foot or something like that. Another player to watch for on the team too is Zacchaeus as well. Really come on towards the end of the year for them as well. So they have the pieces there. I just think I'm going with experience over, just the run right now with that. But then, like I said too, is Washington, no matter what happens, Eagles fans will hold this over their head. But at the same time too, that happens. And then you know what? The Eagles can have their hearts broken in what I think might still be snowy New Orleans. New Orleans has got snow. Northwest Florida's got snow. Is it cold in Massachusetts? Is it freezing in Mass this week or?
Yeah, it is.
It was freezing the last couple of days. It was murderously
rough.
cold.
Yeah, it was that bone chilling cold. I just realized I actually haven't said anything on the addition.
I had the same thing here. I just wanted to ask about that.
My thought there is less about the who and more about the what it could mean. We've heard over the last 2 years of the Patriots, how archaic the Patriots were for their tiny, minuscule, they're really little coaching staff. Everyone out of nowhere 2 years ago, everyone just started talking about how small the coaching staff was, and I was like, holy shit, is that really a thing that people like really track? But apparently, yes, people really track that. So I wonder if this is a direct response to that, and beyond that, if Variable is just looking to have a bigger staff, and if so, I think that would be a good thing. I think having more people in the building is always good if everyone has a specific role and everyone's kind of on the same page. Like, it gives you a lot more room. Also, I think it's important for continuity, right? I think towards the end there with the Patriots, we saw what happened. Josh left, and there was literally no one else you trusted enough to like promote to be the offensive coordinator. And that's something that I think a small staff. That's a way that I think a small staff puts you at a disadvantage, right? When guys got to get hired out and they come in and take their guys, because that also happens. I know people get really bent out of shape about it as far as fan bases go. We saw earlier this week Detroit was really upset. The Lions fans were really upset about losing all of their coordinators and all of their coaches. But that's what happens with good teams, right? Like, this is the tax for being a good team. Like, they're just going to come take your coordinators. And I think having a bigger staff will help with. If that happens again. Obviously, there are some questions about whether or not Josh McDaniels will get a head coaching job again. I really think why not? Because like, everyone is always like off limits until a certain point, right? Everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're not gonna hire Josh. He failed twice already. If he goes on a nice little run with Drake May 3 years in a row, someone's gonna come call him, because they always do.
I think he's an OC. I think that going to one team and failing, you can justify bringing him in a second time and being like, okay, bring him in. Unless it's the Jets
or the Colts,
because they're the only team that
I am telling you, if he is who I think he is going to be over the next few years with Drake May, we see him develop and we see an offense start to come together. I think people are going to come calling. That's what happens with good coaches. Like, they will just like, all right, you know what? Maybe that was what happened with maybe it was Denver's fault, or maybe it was Vegas's fault. Because teams talk themselves into these things all the time. We see it with players, right? We'll see a guy who is just not a good player get moved around the league a bunch because everyone's like, no, I can fix him. I can't see why, if in 3 years the Patriots are doing offensively what they're doing, if it's not going to be a matter of like, you know what? Maybe it wasn't Josh McDaniels. Maybe it was everyone else who was wrong. And beyond him, I think his assistants are also, that's where you get, you kind of lose out. Because like, it's great if if you're like, oh, we're not going to hire Josh McDaniels away, cool. But what if, their wide receiver coach is someone that, what, maybe we can make him an offensive coordinator, and suddenly you're down him. I think, again, a bigger staff helps with kind of staving off some of that attrition.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that people assume that Josh McDaniels would just never leave because he'll never get a head coaching job in the NFL, which I think it's probably more likely than not he doesn't. But we're forgetting about college. We're not talking about college. And
that's true.
That's an avenue that, again, apparently he spent the last year or so in some college programs. He's obviously seeing Bill Belichick, transition from the NFL to college, and seeing how many guys have said that the college game is becoming more like the pro game in terms of NIL and all of that. And again, I don't know how that would work, but I mean, just imagine that Josh McDaniels does do a great job with Drake May, and he is a superstar in 2 years, 3 years. And a college coach is like, look, man, I think you're the right guy to run our program. We will give you carte blanche. Like, you've had all this experience. You're a great football coach. Like, he's only 48 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, right? When people look at somebody like, Spags, right? Like, Spags had Steve Spagnuolo had his coaching opportunity like in, the
that was
early
a dysfunctional
2000s.
mess he walked into, though.
Yeah, right. So, and again, that was like 12 years ago or whatever. I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but it was a bit ago. But Steve Spagnuolo is almost 70 years old now. So, of course, he's not going to be getting another head coaching job or even necessarily looking for another head coaching job at his stage in his career. It's like, until he decides he wants to dip out, like, he'll stick around. But Josh McDaniels, he's still so young. Why would he just be like, I'm going to be the Patriots offensive coordinator for the rest of my career? Like, for if he's going to coach for 20 more years, he's going to sit there and stay with Drake May until he retires? Like, I don't think that would happen. The question is, again, just like, how good of a job does he do? How good does Drake look? And all of that, and who comes calling, and what are they offering? But I've always thought the idea that Josh McDaniels just going to be here with Drake May forever is highly unlikely.
Stupid teams will forget the past and they'll like McGarvin saying, "Oh, it's the Broncos' fault. Oh, it's the Raiders' fault." Some team will take a shot on him because people just forget the past. That's why I mentioned the Colts. I know he left them at the altar, but still,
right. And remember when that happened, we thought, that was the prevailing theory from there. It was like, oh, he was terrible in Denver, and then he spurned the Colts. He's never going to get a head coaching job again. But a few short years later, here comes Vegas. Like it happens.
Yeah.
Who tried recreating the Patriot way with him and Dave.
Hey, they like to they like to gamble a lot down there in Vegas, and they gambled on bringing pizzas. But yeah, the Patriot way down there did not work. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting this year, just because the Patriots have such this, not even like to say they're going to do anything good, but it's like a why not us mentality. Because when you look at the rest of the AFC that they're in right now. Look, the AFC South, besides Houston, is like I still say it's Houston's like the coolest kid at the worst table in high school. The AFC North's kind of in flux right now just because we don't know what we're going to be getting with a lot of the teams. Like we don't know what Pittsburgh's going to be. We don't know what Cleveland's got so many question marks to answer. Cincinnati too, they're going to be a different team next year. And then you have our own division. Buffalo's the Kings until we see someone take them off their throne. New York. I'll say this right now. I don't know what they're going to be offensively, but defensively, they're going to be a problem with Aaron Glenn. They're going to be a problem. And then Miami, like we said, Miami's a team just in flux. They're in disarray. I think if had not signed those contract extensions, Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel will be looking for jobs right now. And then the West is just, look, you have Mahomes, we don't know what Chargers are going to be with Herbert. Do the Broncos take a second-year step back just with Bo Nix because, this team's starting to figure them out, and then the Raiders are going to Raider until proven otherwise because that team hasn't done jack shit in 25 years. So it's this whole – and not the same thing to the Patriots when I say this, why not us? Because, look, if you look at their schedule from what they were going to last year where, hey, your fourth-place reward was Cincinnati, L.A., and Chicago. I know only one of those teams made the playoffs, but all three of those teams had people saying that they're going to make the playoffs. This year, your schedule is the Tennessee Titans, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the New York Giants. All those teams are picking in the top 10. All those teams are bad for a reason. They're not bad on accident. Well, some of them are bad on accident, but the Giants are just, look, they can give $40 million to a quarterback. It doesn't fix the past mistakes that you've done, even though Tyrone Tracy is serviceable. So they can take advantage of a lot of situations to where now it's like, look at New England, we didn't expect New England, to where everyone kind of views us now as, the dynasty's over. It's a slouch. Robert Kraft's losing money, yada, 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 which those reports I always hate. The whole, secondary ticket market. It's like he's like losing money. No one wants to go to the games. It's $30 to get in. Those tickets have already been paid for. His pockets are happy. 32 owners win every year, no matter what. So with the Patriots, look, go have a good free agency, get Abdul Carter, get an offensive lineman on day 2. And you know what? Why not us? One other thing I want to say about the Patriots right now with Terrell Williams getting brought in as coach as well, and I'm going to swear here, but I am ready for Keon White to be a violent motherfucker. That's all I'm going to say.
Please, like he has it. He showed so much promise his rookie season, and I just think
no emotion, but promise.
No, but I just think he was put in a bad situation this season. I think I don't blame him for being fed up if it was about the coaching staff, because there was that whole drama at the end of the season where he said something. Gerard tried to be like, no, he didn't mean it that way. And then he went up to a reporter and was like, you wrote what I told you to write.
Yeah, I think Keon White's going to really, really benefit from this coaching staff, particularly with Terrell Williams. What I'm wondering with him is, when he coached the Lions, they played mostly a 4-man front, right? Like what we would usually call 4-3, right? Like that was their front. They ran a four down front. In Tennessee, it was a lot of that as well early. I'm almost wondering if that is what he plans to run here. And if so, I think the biggest beneficiary there would be Keon White, because right now he's a bit of a tweener on the Patriots roster. I think he's a good player. I just don't really know what position he plays, right? Like he's not really big enough to play outside linebacker. And you can try him inside. It's just it's a weird fit, right? To play him as you really can't play him as a 34 end, and he's not big enough to play outside linebacker. It's weird. So I'm wondering, personally, I think he's best suited as a strong side a strong side ended in a 4-3. I think if Terrell Williams, I know I'm getting a little in the X's and notes here, but that is all to say, if Terrell Williams comes and runs the offense, runs the defensive front, I think he will. I think Keon White is really going to benefit from that.
I think that this is a guy that you're bringing in who has respect around the league, and that's not to say like DeMarcus Covington didn't have respect. I don't want it to come off like that. I just think that he wasn't. It was the whole freaking coaching staff wasn't ready for what they were told to do. And it was, it's the same way where this is a staff now that I think every single person can be held accountable for their own actions. Which is where I think was lacking this past season, was like no one could be accountable for their own actions because no one knew what those actions freaking were. Like they didn't know what they were doing because everyone's roles expand so far outside of, what their job title was, because half the people didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. So this season, this is people who, have their jobs, who know their jobs, who you have a head coach who knows what he's doing. You have an offensive coordinator who clearly knows his way around Foxborough pretty well. So that's something good. You don't have to give him the official tour when he comes to visit. He'll just walk right into his office and be like, oh, look at my thing's still there.
He hasn't seen the lighthouse, though. Who's going to show him the lighthouse?
No, that's true. That's true. Drake. Drake will take him to the top of the lighthouse. But it's just things like that where there's no excuses right now, but in the best way.
It's basically like there's leeway in the sense of like, hey, this team won 4 games last year, but I think because even say if September, October is a little rough and wonky, I don't think anyone here is going to be jumping to conclusions, and no one's saying, hey, this team's going to be finishing their year in San Francisco next year, which, spoiler, that's where the Super Bowl is. But if by November and December there's still weird messaging and there's still like a lot of weird games and stuff, like 2 examples I have to give is the Miami Dolphins game and then the Arizona Cardinals game, where it's just mess after mess, even though I know you were at one of them, Sophie. That's where the fan base gets annoyed.
If I hear that Vrabel's in the back playing cards with the players, I'm going to have an interesting take on that one when that time comes. But I don't really think that's going to be happening.
No.
Well, I mean, Vrabel is probably just going to stroll past them and be like, you know what? If I wanted to play cards, I would destroy every single one of you. It's like pick your time and place. But
if
I
win,
go walk up to the front and watch them film.
If I win, you're doing hill sprints when we get back to Gillette. Like, it's going to be something like that.
Yeah, no, seriously, exactly. It's going to be like, you know what? Like, if I win, you're fucked.
Literally, it's what this team needed, and I think that one day Gerard will be a great head coach, and I hope that he gets another opportunity. But just right here, right now, you can't pick this guy for right after Bill. And but at the same time, I think it was the best thing to ever happen at Vrabel, because now Vrabel's going to be compared to Gerard and not Bill the whole season.
It was like
you never want to follow the guy. You want to follow the guy that follows the guy. Same kind of thing here. I want to be didn't want to be the one to follow Bill, but I'll follow Gerard.
And everyone thinks this was so planned by the Crafts. It was not, because this was the Crafts swallowing their pride in getting rid of Mayo, because they handpicked the guy. They had a whole coaching staff in front of him for so long, and we're like, that's our next head coach right there. So this is the guy that you brought in. Yeah, you can't go up to a podium and talk about Thunder and have like them fire him the next year. Like, no, they swallowed their pride. They knew they had screwed up, and they were like, let's make a change. But they did not go into that season knowing that Vrabel was, available, being like, next season, that's our guy. No, they hoped Gerard was going to be around for a while. It just was very clear that no one else felt that way.
The only thing I hate about the Gerard stuff is everyone saying, why didn't you fire him before the Bills game? And I'm like, what message does that really send? Like we saw with Kyrie's team this year, like, Eberflus deserved to get fired for what he did on Thanksgiving, but still the fact that
well, and the thing is that was 2.5 years. Like, yeah. and there was no improvement. You knew it wasn't going to get better, and it should have been done.
It's respect. I think it's less about the status of the team. You weren't competing for anything. You were knocked out of playoffs after the Bengals win, and that was a win. So it's like Like you were not in any running. So it's like
you had a good game against Seattle. Great. But no one had this team going to the playoffs. I think at most of us were saying, hey, if they go 5-12 or 6-11, it would have been a successful season. But it's 2 years of 4 wins in a row. The only thing I'll say too is with the whole like where they are right now, they're gonna have so many 1:00 games that they're just gonna get lost in the shuffle, kind of like hopefully what the Texans
I love as a reporter, I
2023.
love the 1:00 games though. I'm so okay with that.
Exactly. They're the best.
From a reporter, I'm just being selfish on the reporter standpoint. Oh my God, I love a good 1:00 game though.
No, seriously. I mean,
no.
yeah. And I mean, well, okay, from that standpoint, right? Like, you know, if I'm trying to dip out on kid duty, you know, it's always best to have it afterwards, 4:25 or 8:00 or whatever, because I can just come home and go to sleep and do all that. But, you know, especially for writing purposes for the B-Side newsletter, which by the way, subscribe, B-Side Sports newsletter, hit that up. But I mean, it's always the worst to have to do the newsletter because it's like my edits are supposed to come in at 6, right? So it's like, okay, well, I hope this game has a very clear storyline by the end of it. Oh yeah, the Drake made to this one pass. Okay, cool. That's my one headline. That's all I need to talk about.
When you have your whole lead written, the whole lead is written, and then they just like do some crazy shit, and you're just like, now what do I do?
Well, that's what it was the last week of the season. It was just like, yeah, like I had the whole thing written. It's like, yeah, Patriots post-mortem. This is the good, the bad, the ugly from the season. Oh, by the way, we fired Gerard an hour after the game. And you're like,
that was wild.
Fuck me, man.
At that point, because we were all, every reporter was still at the stadium. And
yes, we're sitting in the press box, and it's just like, oh my God, they did it. You got to be kidding me. Yeah.
And it wasn't
Were you up in the press box for that?
I was up in the press box and I was working on a story, so I didn't even have Twitter open at the moment. Like my phone was like on, I had like my voice memos app going back to listen to transcripts, so I wasn't paying attention to Twitter at all in that moment. I was like, gotta get my these stories up, and it was I think one of the Bills reporters who was right behind me and some others, and they were like, hey guys, Gerard was just fired, and it's like, oh my gosh. So that entire night, I had all these stories. I like all these, interviews. And I think more than half of the ones that I just had that were like post-game angles that now won't mean anything. But at the time I had, are still sitting there because it was like everything got changed the minute that news broke.
It's so fascinating how that world works, where it's just
I am interested.
Well, because it's like when you're post game, like yes, you're paying attention to Twitter, but that was like one of the games where you're like, okay, like the season's now over. We have our clear angles. Like, let's get out and goodbye. But no, we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, because I think also at least for myself, and I felt like a lot of some of the other reporters I talked to, no one expected it to be that night. I thought that it would be hide it in the Black Monday firings, as much as you like the guy like
announced around like 8:30 in the morning or something like that.
Don't draw this out. Just have this be it, and you're done. That's that. But
well, they didn't draw it out.
I mean, I guess thank you, but like
it was Joe Pesci and Goodfellas-esque.
God, I was just like. I just thought that was like a slap in the face because this guy was up at the podium talking about, well, like I'll go back and watch the film. I'll let you guys know in the morning. And that was that.
Spoiler alert, he did not let them know in the morning.
We did not find out. We found out from Kraft in the morning.
Yes. Which I still say this, and I always will say this. He handled that press conference as perfectly as he could.
I gave him a lot of credit because he sat up there. He could have been like, it just wasn't working out. But he was like, I screwed up. This is my damn fault. But we're fixing it.
And I know we've been bagging on Shad. We haven't done it publicly on the show tonight, but I know Shad Khan's been getting a lot of heat the last 24 hours for what may happen with Liam Cohen, how he handled the Trent Baalke firing. McGarvin's tweet is A+ on it. But the fact that Kraft's an owner that, is dedicated and catered to a lot of things really makes for a good team and gives us that sense of hope and optimism.
I have that hope when I watched what happens with the Cowboys. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like not a knock on any Cowboys fans. It's just like the things that like I just think Jerry comes out and he like makes it 10 times harder for the coach, like, because he'll come out and be like, I can't believe they did that. And it's like, when your owner is saying this crazy stuff, like Kraft is going to stand behind you 1,000% in the media until he isn't when he fires you. But up until that last moment, like there is not going to be a single thing leaked from his side coming out that's like they're unhappy. Like all the reports were like it's trending towards Gerard having another year until the morning of that final game when Schefter had that whole thing that I'm leaning that he's out, and we're all like, well, you're hearing this from somewhere. What are you hearing? That we're all like, whoa.
Yeah, you know what? It's what happened, and you know what? We're just glad they moved past it and it was handled the way that it did. But you know what? The only other thing I'll say too is Robert Kraft doesn't let people tour his facility and have the players kind of be like, look at the player, look at the football player. It's like, this is not a zoo. This is a football facility, and that's grown-ass men who hurt people for a living. But anyway, guys, man, we've been meaning to do this. I know, but we've been meaning to do this for a very long time, the four of us, because the three of us have been squad goals. Kyrie's now a member of the squad. It's been a lot of fun. Look, we talked Patriots, we talked AFC, NFC championship game, football. Guys, enjoy football this weekend because before you know it, it's going to be gone, and we're going to be wishing for a crappy Browns-Broncos primetime game because that's what we do, because we love this game.
For that Thursday night trash.
Exactly. We live for the Thursday night trash where Al Michaels is just mentally checked out. Although I will say now, I love the fact that Troy Aikman's just like ZFG when he's in the booth, where he's just like, I'm going to speak my mind.
Yeah.
But you know what, guys? Enjoy the football games this weekend. There's so much news to break down. The four of us will be back together at some point. Because why? Because it's my show and I call the shots. Episode 342 is in the bag. We got a lot of content coming up because the Super Bowl is 2 weeks away. Enjoy Championship Sunday, everyone.
Bye.
Wait